network that should attend. And I'll hand over to you, Elaine.
Thank you. I will keep it very, very brief because we've got lots to get through today. For those of you that don't know me, I am Elaine Smith. I'm Senior Programme Manager for Worklessness at Aging Better. We've also got Lucy, who is chairing today from Aging Better, and Arena, and I think I've seen Kim hiding in the background as well. So there's a few of us around, and we will be in breakouts later for sort of help guide some of the conversations we might have. As Elizabeth said, this is really, we've done a few of these previously, but what we really want to do now is drive this forward with as much participation as possible. We do have some people that have already come forward and agreed to present for us today, which is great. And really just to make this a network and a forum and a place to share ideas and our insights, as well as we get them out of the work that we're doing at Aging Better, and use them to help inform some of the resources that we pull together as well. So as I'm very conscious of time, I will pass over to the first of our speakers today. So we have got Daisy Mills from Rift, and she is going to speak to us about older workers and self-employment. Daisy there.
I've seen Daisy.
Get down.
She is in the meeting, so I don't understand what's happening.
It wouldn't be a webinar without someone not being able to speak properly straight away, would it?
It could be the case that other than us, everybody's muted. Could somebody just check the admin of that?
Well, I can turn my mic on and off.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
So I'm assuming others can as well.
Yeah, I think I can turn mine on off as well. Okay. And on. Can you hear me?
Yes, so can I. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Daisy is leaving, yes.
Must be having IT issues then. Should we give her another minute? Yeah.
Yes. I'm reticent to
like
switch things
around.
I'm reticent to switch things around because I know that Daisy has a clash, and so we've switched the agenda up a bit, so she's on first. So if we get going on a different presentation, we might not actually have chance. Yeah, she says she's just leaving and rejoining. So we're still on time, so we've got a minute or two.
It doesn't matter how many sort of webinars or presentations, tech is always going to be a little bit, figures somewhere in every presentation.
Speaking of which, Joel, it doesn't look like I can hand over control through this platform, so I am just going to have to do it for you. I'm sorry. You're on mute.
I'm going to have to give you a knowing look. Slide change, transition.
Has Daisy come back? Not yet. If someone could just keep an eye out for Daisy. Oh, she is back. Daisy, are you there? I can see you in the... Oh no, she's just left again.
Do you want me to start and then stop when she comes in, or will that be a bit messy?
What I'll do actually is, whilst we're waiting for her, if someone can yell when she gets here, I'm going to jump to some stuff that we were going to cover at the end, which I can cover off in about 5 or so minutes, and that might buy a little bit more time. So we are looking to start a quarterly newsletter that will have might have blogs that will have link information about all of the work we do across Centre for Aging Better, not only kind of within our worklessness strand of work that Elaine and I work on, but also our employment strand as well, which will have things like our employer pledge, and also potentially information about people who've been at this meeting, or stuff around kind of the upcoming next Older Workers Forum. If you would really like to receive that newsletter, and I guess you might want to wait till the end before you decide, but if you would like to receive that newsletter, then please feel free to either pop your email address in the chat and we can copy it from there, or if you'd rather just send it to myself or Arena directly, our email addresses will be at the end of this presentation. So we'll be able to kind of capture them there, and then we'll be able to kind of share information with you about the things that are happening at Centre for Ageing Better. Any progression on Daisy? Not that I can see. Okay, Joel, what I might do then is I might go to you rather than kind of wait any further.
Sure.
Just double check she's not snuck back in whilst we weren't looking. No, okay. Right, so I'm just going to stop sharing whilst in fact, I might just click through the slides. Actually, that might be the quickest way. So just bear with me a moment as we get through the slides to the right slide. There you go, John.
Okay. So thanks for inviting me along to speak about my experiences with older workers and the work that we've been doing in coaching, group coaching older workers through the experience of redundancy and then considering what they might do going forward. So my background is has been in corporate and in charities, but also then within training and personal development and coaching as well. So let's have a look. Yes, so what we started off with was looking at a redundancy support project that was looking at helping older workers think about their space a little bit more. So today I'm going to pick out those 3 specific areas, which are going to be the approach. So I'm going to give you knowing look there, Lucy. Right. Think about the offer that we put out there, the features that were part of it and the journey that people took. Then the observations that I'll just drop in to some icons that you'll see, and we'll think about some observations. And then the learning that we've taken from that. There was some space for questions at the end, but if anything actually does come up, you know, I'm happy that if you want to pop something in the chat and someone can notice that, that'd be great. But it's really just sharing my experience and my observations, and those are my colleagues that have worked on the programme. Thank you, Lucy. So we looked at an approach that was thinking about group coaching rather than individual coaching to enable older workers in a specific sort of contextual area, which was in manufacturing and automation. So people that are maybe more associated with shop floor, tracks, that sort of thing, come to some thinking that wasn't inside their normal sphere of thinking. So the risk around a sudden redundancy or planned redundancy, but fixed over a certain period of time, is that, you know, what are you going to do afterwards, and how do you think in a slightly different way? And there was a lot coming up for people when we're in the sessions around, do I always do what I've always done? Do I do something differently? We put it as a 3-day program. So this was to be immersive. It was to allow for personal processing of some of the issues that were coming up and allowing a space to think differently. And lastly, it was a practical experience that we noticed was happening for senior management and middle management, this idea of we offer one-to-one and individual ideas and thinking to those people, but actually we put everyone else in a box and we say, right, well, there you go. You may have worked here for 2 years or 30 years. You're the same person. Here's a sheet of paper. Here's a little booklet. And we'll talk to you a little bit about doing some generic CVs. Thank you. So thanks, Lucy. So we considered it wasn't just coaching, and there were 3 elements to it that seemed to be important with older workers. Those are the idea of coaching, so facilitating this peer group environment which allows people to surface their feelings, thoughts, ideas, asks questions in a way that maybe hadn't been asked before. It really needed facilitation as an important part of what we did. So this space is not a natural space for a lot of people, and it's not something that has been part of their work experience. So how do we create something that feels safe and experiential. And then finally, the mentoring side, which we thought was really important as well, the sense that for older workers, you know, having someone who's very young and telling them how it should be, actually it could be beneficial to be in a situation where we've been through something as well. So I've been through redundancy, I've had to manage redundancies before, my colleagues as well, the same thing. So mentoring, it turned out, was a and is quite a significant part of it, and we were right to anticipate that that was something that would be useful. I didn't really say that this program is something that has run and is running as well, pilots and prototypes. So thank you. Your anticipation, Lucy, is brilliant. Okay, so I'll briefly touch on the journey. I'm aware of time that we've got, so I'll touch on the journey that we went through and then sort of look at some of the things we took from it. So initially, it was about exploring. So we sort of had these icons as the focal point, and if we go to explore, yeah, time to think and reflect and to manage the change that's happening. It was interesting to see and hear from people going through the course how they hadn't anticipated that this was part of it. And so for an older worker maybe that's used to being resilient within themselves, hasn't had to face some of this before, this time to think and reflect was really important for engaging with what's going on in them at this time as they consider the change, and to see some of the feelings that came up, some of the anger, those issues that you get when you're facing change in your life. And then we were talking about from exploring to engaging. So the sense that we are supporting and refocusing, we're allowing some access or enabling some access to opportunities, thinking forward about what might come up as they step forward through this journey. On day 2, so if we go to day 2, we can see that part of it was about discovery. So we've done the exploring, you know, the who we are, what's going on for us, and then we're moving into skills and abilities and how we communicate that to those around us, how we communicate that through the documentation of CVs, and how we communicate through through interviews and so on. So certainly there was a lot around skills and abilities that came through really strongly. And then secondly, on this page, it was into future thinking. And a lot of things came up in around the future thinking side as to what's my current experience and what do I want to do now? What are the future opportunities? What are the parameters that I need to decide? What do I need to see and take account of? Who else is involved in all of these decisions? Do I need to do this alone? And so on. Lots of questions around assumptions, and then moving outside of that assumption box that people put themselves in. And then thirdly, the third part of the journey, the third day, was around action and doing things with what we've discovered and finding out that actually it's not an insurmountable goal. It is something we can do pretty quickly. And so the work we've done on days 1 and 2 generate information for a CV, and then the CV is created between the 2nd and 3rd day, and they come into day 3 with a ready CV to use. So we think about how we use that and go into all those things that we understand, maybe younger workers understand about how they might apply for jobs, changing CVs, rewriting per job and so on. And then looking at how to apply and how to try. And then lastly, we look at the real experience of interviewing, and we go through not just the theory of it and a little bit of a trial, but literally working through the questions and how to answer them, and lots of resources along the way. So I think one of the most important things when you're working with people is that you don't leave it all hanging, certainly with older workers, where things have to be done afterwards and remembered and worked through. So what we did, we completed as takeaways to be able to use and then revisit with family and friends. So the observations I would make, so that was our process, and one that we're doing currently. So we're working with people. So the first observation would be about processing the shock. It's quite significant, the amount of anger and then resentment and issues that come up time and time again as we are going through the thinking. And I think it's really important to have raised that. And I think that's important as of any part of a coaching and acceptance of change and moving forward, is to process this sentiment that is rising within you. The next one, you'll see that we've got building confidence. there was a sense with the people that we've worked with that there is a confidence there, but it's a surface level and a front. And this deeper sense of confidence about who they are, what they can offer, their ability to compete in a marketplace, to not just settle for the first thing or the only thing that comes along. That confidence came with more thought and more discussion, and came through in some of their feedback. So I think it's important to give older workers a space to build their confidence again in a safe environment. Then the third thing on this first tranche was the thinking forward. Much of the thinking was very up close. It was, what do I do now? How do I save face with my family? How do I still be, if it was a breadwinner, the breadwinner? How can I find a job where they'll look after me, and the fact that I've got arthritis in my feet and I can't stand up all day? You know, it's how do I think about these things in a way that is constructive and positive, and I can see it in a way that empowers me, gives me agency. And I think that those three elements from the coaching point of view are quite significant at the beginning. And then we move into the middle bit, which was challenging, and challenging gently, but challenging. And I think it's that challenging of thought, it's challenging of ideas, it's asking people more of themselves, which seem to come through very strongly. And it's always a really positive space to be in, this safe space for challenging. So this is what we did. And alongside that, for the next one, you can see the peer support. And these are, whether it's a peer group from the same organization or peer from outside, and having worked in both, it was really important for the coach to generate this rapport within the room, and watching people just relax and be okay with others, and sharing things that they say they would never have shared anywhere else. And I think that, for me, watching that happen and seeing people grow stronger is fantastic. But then we move sort of into the next couple, which you could throw up at the same time: surfacing skills and upskilling as well. The surfacing skills was very much, if I said to you, tell me about your job, and you would tell me some hard skills, and we were defining, and there was a lot of clarity around hard skills and soft skills. The soft skills element, the transferable side of what they do, was and is eye-opening. And I think if we can enable older workers to see themselves with a set of skills that are built up over a long period of time, to see the value of that, to see that the job is not defined by the hard skills they do. I can work that machinery, I can do this, but the fact that they have meetings, they communicate, they organize, they train people, it rarely comes up as the first thing that they know about themselves. And so these are all transferable, opening up doorways and avenues and chances that aren't obvious initially. And then the upscaling element comes from thinking about small bits of tech, and I'll reflect on the tech in a minute. There was a hope to sort of enable people in that space, but I think we have to be careful how we do that. But certainly upskilling opportunities that come up. So that would come through external connections through, let's say, the National Careers Service, connections with other areas where they do training and development and so on. And that forms part of our thinking as well. And then into the next two, we go into preparing and applying. You know, this idea that the world of online application for some is easy and others haven't been near it at all. And so the learning to job hunt and how you might filter for location, for job role, for looking at different job descriptions to see what gaps you have was a enlightening space and really useful to do. So you can see how we're progressing and how people grew within this time. And then the final thing is, look, getting the right job, and the right job isn't always the same job as before. And there's quite a shift in thinking from the left-hand side of that screen to the right-hand side. And that's the sort of the approach, and then sort of the observations I would make about this journey. And it's not always easy for people, but it is something that you see a change as you go through it. And so from the observations, I'll just dip into the learning. Lucy, I have to say, I didn't keep an eye on the time. Am I okay for time for the moment?
A couple more minutes.
Okay, so learning. This is what I took from it, and we can use this later as we talk about things. Participants felt respected. That was really important. There was insight. Workers from different sectors, I think, will have different experience around what they bring into it, but I think that the whole thing is relevant for everybody. Some have a natural affinity towards this sort of support, others don't. Connecting with other services, really important as part of any sort of program for delivering in this way. Factors affecting educational level and background. This impacts the confidence with written and spoken English. I've worked with a number of people now with dyslexia. I've written there lifelong hidden coping strategies for specific learning difficulties. Now, this is a man that would not speak to us in the room, wouldn't do any engagement initially, and once he felt safe enough to explain why, everybody helped out, rather than take it home and work through it with his partner. Personal financial situations form a massive difference for people. Some don't need to work, some do, some absolutely have to. And so it relates to the urgency, and managing that in the room can be interesting. Traditional support feels more familiar. Yep, where they focus through the normal strategy of helping people into work. But I think a coaching approach, a place where someone can go through this process, I think is incredibly valuable. There's perceived vacancy levels in appropriate roles locally that can affect the amount people want to give to this. And then not understanding what support aims to achieve. What is it this program, this type of coaching aims to achieve? And sometimes that can be difficult for people to connect with and take a risk on. And then there's the fear, you know, what's it going to be like? And if I can go, I'll go quickly through the next one because there's a couple of points. I think it's useful to expose the need for technical skills, but not to impose that as a need. I think we have to identify champions who can help. That's something that's come through. Being in small groups was a really positive thing. So it allowed different interactions, looking at motivation, mental health, mindset, and so on. I think there is something really important around intellectual engagement with concepts. You know, it's very easy to tell people, well, this is what it is, but the Kubler-Ross change curve, okay, to understand what's going on inside you and put yourself on that curve and move things around. To do that, it has really worked. The circle of control and influence, cognitive triangle, yeah, understanding there's an amygdala in our heads that makes us respond in a certain way. Once you own that, you can make decisions around how you do things. Coaching questions were key throughout. There's mutual respect and a mature approach was really important in the room. That we're not feeding information, that we're giving agency. And then this idea of creating their CV from the words they use, yes, the input that they have created, that then enabled them to take that and develop and to adapt it as needed. And there were creative activities that wouldn't normally be experienced that allow some reflection around what you're doing and how that applies. And the last slide was just some thoughts that came from that, which were some quotes that came out. You could fire them all up, Lucy, I think. Things like, at the beginning, I was terrified of sitting in front of two people asking me questions. I've got the skill, I've got the foresight. I wasn't confident in knowing which jobs I wanted to apply for, but it increased. Fantastic. At the start of the process, I was looking to stay in the same job, but the process has really opened my eyes. I'm looking to go onto a course to get qualifications and further education, and how I can train other people to progress in engineering. You can read some of these here. It's that confidence levels were very, very low at the start, but confidence has risen and boosted with the teamwork and interaction. Teamwork and interaction came through again and again. It was so low at the start because if you've been at the company 5 minutes or 5 years, it feels like you've been put on the scrap heap, and no one has talked to us about that. And now I feel like I've been lifted. And I think some of those you can read the rest. I'll wrap it up there, but that's the experience I have working with older workers in a group coaching environment, enabling agency, enabling understanding, and working with them through the feelings, thoughts, and then actions that they can take to make decisions for themselves going forward that are beneficial for them.
Thank you, Joel. I've just stopped sharing. Sadly, Daisy has had to leave because she didn't have time, and I think she came in quite far through Joel's presentation. So it actually gives us a bit more time, which means we do have time for questions now. So we can probably spend about 10 minutes. Ask if anyone has any direct questions for Joel. Is there anything that so one's coming on the chat and one's come in hands up. If you have the chat one.
Job search, yeah, job search is an interesting one. So we show people Indeed, and I've got a list that we put out. So we try out up on the screen a group of maybe between 6 and maybe 9 people in the room. We'll put it up and we'll walk through various of the job searches, and they'll get the phones out and start signing in and logging in and creating profiles on, mainly Indeed, but also on some other ones that seem appropriate to them. It's trying to open up avenues rather than, which you often get is, well, I've been around some local firms and handed in a letter. I'm reading something and that takes me off the track of thought. A chat that came up. So yes, I think it's this idea that it goes beyond that local word of mouth thing. It's fantastic if the word of mouth thing works. I mean, people know people, that's great. But one of the things that seems to come up quite a lot is, do you want to carry on doing this job, or is there something else out there, and is it worth investigating? So I hope that answers the question. We look at a number of different ways, and then we sort of settle into having them explore and experience so that it doesn't feel alien after they leave the group. Was there another question?
Deborah was next.
Hello, I just wanted to raise something that came out of an experience. I actually went to an over 50s job fair. So part of that was to work with those that I support anyway. But it's also a really good way of gauging how they're feeling and the sort of programs they're being directed to. One of the things I was going to say is the navigation of the atlas of job seeking, and you just mentioned that, Joel, and I think that they're too often referred to one or two addresses, and it's a whole plethora of sites out there, and that often opens their eyes because some of them hadn't searched for a job for 34 years. That was my experience. The last one, an engineering company had shut down and they'd gone. The other one was, and you didn't touch on this, but it can lead to how resistant they are to engage with programs, that they've been treated appallingly badly by their HR, internal management, and they had in no way been prepared for redundancy in any shape or form. In fact, it was verging on nothing. So all of the things that some of these companies should have done and didn't, and that also impacted on the conversations with the DWP, the job centres, because they were all being talked to as though they were, your typical job seeker. And we all know what we mean by that. And yet no one had looked at their background, their history. They just simply, started the conversations in exactly the same way. And that often disengages an older job seeker, because a few of them had actually resisted going into the job centre at all. And a couple of them being sanctioned because they didn't understand and didn't like what, the sort of the culture of the job centre. So I think one of the other things, and it's not mentioned here, but I'm just going to throw this in the pot, is how do we change the narrative of the job coaches so that they're better trained? And I mean that for other agencies as well, because sometimes they talk to everyone in the same disinterested way, and it's not all of them, but it does disengage a lot of older job seekers.
So Deborah, you mentioned two absolutely important points, and I didn't dwell on it, but so I recall one is the job coaches, and then the other one was the nature of engaging with things and being treated badly. And you're absolutely right. I think HR see a mass of individuals and push them all through in pilot high, sell it cheap process of attempting to help people, and that's really where the whole reason for this group coaching course came into being, that the fact that over 50s you need to be considering something differently. But you raise an immensely strong point. It took multiple meetings with the HR lead in a company making group redundancies to consider that this was even a good idea, and that it could link in with the other work that was going on. Also, there is an expectation that there is a simple process that they just have to slot into. And how do we change that mindset? Because I've been in an office space with 6 people going through the program, and then the local employability team come in and they're doing something similar, but it isn't similar. It's not talking with people in a true, it's just trying to bang out a standard looking CV with some standard sentences to then push people into the process. And I think people deserve better than that. So I think that's really important. The job coach thing is a massive question. I spent 6 months working with the DWP new job coaches with an organization that was trying to encourage different thinking, to question, to coach, rather than tell them what they've got to do in 15 minutes, and then off they go because they've got the next call. And you could see coaches, work coaches, really wanting to do that, but then saying they've got to see 80 people this week and they have to hit certain targets. And the targets are very, very, lots of people, low results. And it's a frustration. So that's a great question. How do we influence change in the environment out there to, one, understand the difference in the cohorts that are coming through, and two, the mindset that allows people time for growth and to process?
I think what I would add to that, Joel, is that Centre for Ageing Better have we created a resource that was about upskilling employability workers, which is available if you're a member of, and I'm going to throw your name because my brain has gone very blank, the Institute of
IEP.
Employability Professionals. Yeah, thank you. So that's available through their platform. But we also have, just in the past couple of months, started to release some resources on our own website, which are around supporting the development of employability workers and job coaches and people who work in employer engagement facing role. And so they're available on our website currently. Elaine has her hand up.
Yeah, I just was going to add to that as well. We do speak to Job Centre a lot, and we have a good relationship with them, and I think it's come a long way and there's been some good efforts. There is a lot of work to do, but what we are doing in the next couple of months is providing them with some workshops as well and some training, so we can speak to them in a bit more detail and give them some guidance around what we know. The feedback we get from you is really useful for that as well. So if there are specific things that you have noticing or things that you think it's worth us picking up with them, then please let us know so that we can do that. They are starting to be a lot more receptive. And if there's anything that we can get across that will help with getting people through the door in the first place a lot of the time and helping get over that wariness that people have of services, and then meaning that they get more out of their time when they're in the room with them, then we really like to hear that. As Lucy said, obviously we've got our guides, we've got our resources, we're giving them everything that we know, but anything that we can add to that conversation or any specifics that we can keep pushing on with, because it's not going to be a quick change, but if it's something that we can keep trying to influence them, and anything that you come across or good practice, particularly within job centres as well, that can help to influence other centres, then please keep us in the loop with that, and we will try and do what we can to get through to them that way.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm just going to pick up Molly's question from the chat. So she'd said, outside the fantastic testimonials and feedback, are there any other methods that we've used to track impact or results following the sessions? So this is still an active pilot. We've still got, we're still going to the end of the year, but it has been externally evaluated by Learning and Work Institute. So there is a full evaluation framework that sits behind this work, and that is tracking all sorts of indicators, everything you can think of, from kind of basic demographic information, but also people's job level before, people's job level afterwards, salaries, job satisfaction, if people do a volunteering start as well as a work start. There's a whole thing and qualitative as well as quantitative. And additionally to that, so we'll be putting out an interim report on this particular project. There'll be something coming out May time next year, I suspect, by the time we've kind of had the report and then we've had a chance to digest it and sort of put something out on it. But we've also built into that independent evaluation a 12-month follow-up period. So the evaluators will be going back to as many people as possible from the original cohorts 12 months later to see what, if any, sort of sustained behaviour change and job satisfaction there is, having been through the programme. So we are tracking it. We don't have that to date, but sort of early indications are that people are finding this just as useful as they did with the prototyping that we ran last year, and so we're kind of really keen to sort of see how that goes, and we will be coming back to this group next year to kind of share more as we have it. I'm going to stop questions now and hand over to Sarah. I've seen you somewhere, Sarah. Oh, there you are. You're actually on my screen right now. I'm going to switch over to Sarah for, I'm going to just start sharing my screen again. So bear with me, and then Sarah can kind of take on the mantle of her presentation.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me and present to, to a cohort of professionals across the sector. So my name is Sarah Rucroft Kirkwood, and I'm the managing director of Kirkwood Consulting, and we are a training and recruitment business based in London. And Lucy, we can go to the next slide. So for us, something that's been important, or that is very important to to my team, to myself, is that in my nearly 30 years of working within learning development and recruitment, is that there's always been a mission and a drive to make sure that not just for my team that I've managed in the past working for large corporates, it's about accessibility of meaningful training that will really look at making teams a lot stronger, giving them the tools and the skills that they need to be more efficient, more effective in their role. And this is something that's been really integral to the way that we look at our services, our training courses. So we actually started to work with unemployed professionals in the 1998 recession. So the financial crisis was when we actually responded to redundancy, working with Job Centre Plus across London, supporting individuals that have been made redundant as a result of the financial crisis. From there, we kind of, really focused in terms of our delivery for our corporate clients has been around learning and development. But something that was really important to me, and a sector, an area, geographical point, is that throughout all the governments and throughout all of the providers that we have worked with over the years, there is an element of insufficient support to professionals and graduates that are unemployed, because there is this kind of concept or this mentality that actually if you're a professional, you're a graduate, you don't actually need that support. You can get that role for yourself. So what we did was we're fortunate enough to have worked with a really, really good provider across London, who really did see the value of our professional courses that we were able to condense and to make it work for the provision on the Working Health programme. And we started to deliver really meaningful training that normally would not be available to unemployed professionals and graduates, just because of funding and also the levels of programmes that we did. So the programme itself was a real success. We had some real insight in terms of the participants that we worked with across London, what they had to offer, and we were able to really support them to make that transition back into employment. With most important thing is that they've got their career aspirations intact. I think that's really, really critical, because obviously being unemployed, we go through those different motions. It's a grieving process, I suppose, and it's about how we can engage with those individuals. So our mission is really quite simple. We just want to have training courses that are meaningful, courses that are available for unemployed professionals and graduates. So within that, our demographics, we noticed that we had a number of participants that were mature. So what we wanted to look at was how we could really, look at our corporate clients that we work with, look at the inclusion, the CSR and the policies around, engagement of individuals, that this could be a second career, or individuals that are really have a lot to offer, but just need to realign where they're at, what their skills are, what they've got to offer. So with that, for us, bridging the gap for 50 plus was really, really important, because we noticed that, especially for the skilled, highly skilled 50 plus professional, the salary is an issue, the type of role, and general consensus. So we looked at three key elements with purpose. So we felt that, giving them real good insight in terms of the process of interviews, especially for a lot of our corporate clients. For those roles, you're looking at 3, 4, 5 interviews in some cases, going through different types of, processes from psychometric evaluations to presentations. So we really kind of worked with those guys to make that insightful, but also to really give them the tools and the edge that they need. So the other bit was in terms of empowering them. We felt that it was really, really important that they do feel empowered in terms of that they do still have a lot to offer. And it's also about ensuring that the training and support that we provide to them is in line with current changes within the market, employer expectations, and that's where the recruitment element comes in, because we're obviously still recruiting for clients, so we have that insight in terms of what they're doing, how they're doing that, and the changes within the sector. Next slide, please, Lucy. So we kind of looked at what we could do, how we could support more of the 50 plus professionals across London. And we also got an opportunity with the same training provider to support the cohorts across Manchester. So this was really, really important, because what we were looking at was the landscapes are very, very different. So what we found is that the critical insights of demographics was really key, opportunities, as well as tools, platforms, and most importantly, that it's about the challenges around historical strengths, demands, but also regeneration of organisations and corporates coming into Greater Manchester area. And within that, we know that across the across the Northwest, the 50 plus demographic will add £41 billion to the economy, and across the UK, we're looking at £440 billion can be added to the UK coffers if people can just really be open about the recruitment process, but really be open and be less judgmental about what an individual can bring and how they can support their organisations to succeed with an element of flexibility. Potential growth, within that age group of 50 to 64 age bracket in the Northwest, that would give that regional economy an extra £2 billion, especially certainly the organisations that I have been speaking and engaging with over the last 5 years across the Greater Manchester area. It's about investment from government or lack of it, and about also regeneration. And we've got kind of that disparity of financial poverty as well as other impactful things. But it's got some really fantastic universities. So with all intents and purposes, we should have more of a level playing field. And we found that 21% of older workers are, for them, it's around that kind of digital sector. And the other is about educational gap, which I found really startling, actually, considering we have some really fantastic universities across Greater Manchester, is that the qualifications of those of that age group is less than we have in London. Can you see the next slide, please? So for us, what we did was we did a direct comparison. For us, for the Work and Health programme across London, we saw and we engaged with 628 professionals and execs across London. Of that, 60% of our participants were actually parents. And this was just at the beginning of the pandemic. 50% of those navigated just I suppose the challenges of single parenthood, because we found a lot of parents, especially single parents, with lockdown and COVID, we had flexibility where we could work from home, we could fit it around childcare. And when the restrictions were lifted, more and more organisations were wanting those individuals to come back to work, and it wasn't at all possible because childcare was still an issue. Some of the schools were still closed, and some of the nurseries were also closed. So we were kind of looking in terms of the demographic of that, and 35% of those were professionals aged over 50 that we supported within that cohort. So we then looked at that across Manchester, and what we found, certainly is early days for us, we found that actually the participants lacked a lot of confidence, their IT and digital skills. There was a real disparity to what we had. But the other element was that 98% of the individuals we engaged with did not have a laptop or computer or access to the internet. So I don't know how these individuals are supposed to feel supported to then find a job or go back into work. And so that was really, really staggering. And they weren't so, I suppose, willing to travel longer distances. So in terms of to get to training courses or to appointments or to interviews. So for us, we found that actually of the cohorts that we did see, only 15% of those were actually professionals and graduates. So what we have found is actually we're adapting, and we're continually adapting our courses and our programs to kind of look at the disparity that we've got and how we can better support the individuals that we're engaging with. So we've certainly feel that those are challenges, but we do feel that the winds are changing. We do believe that, certainly from experience from meetings and from my visits to Manchester, that there is more opportunities coming in. That the local kind of council and the stakeholders are doing a lot to try to regenerate the area, but also to bring in new organisations. So I do feel that this is actually a really good time for anybody age 50 plus, certainly, to re-enter the market, with some real, newfound vigor of how we can do this, what they have to offer, the skill set they can bring, and so on. Next slide, please, Lucy. So for us, we looked at things that are really important. We do know that the landscape has changed significantly. Pre-pandemic, from a recruitment point of view, we've seen some real changes in the use of AI. We've seen that change in terms of roles. So comprehensive learning for us is really, really important, is to look at modern recruitment selection practices, really giving them that insight into what to look for, judgmental tests, the use of AI in interviews, the use of AI in terms of evaluation. We're looking at then experience guidance. It's about, okay, so what are the challenges faced? So not just from a recruitment and training perspective, but also 50% of my team are over the age of 50. So these are individuals that are actually, they've gone through redundancy themselves, they have support professionals at senior level, and this is about the insight that they can kind of bring to those individuals that we see. Peer-to-peer support, really, really key, absolutely imperative, I think, that to have that and to feel that they're not on their own. Also using agency connections, not just in terms of signposting, but also organisations. So that's where we use kind of the recruitment element of it. It's really, really important because we can have those open and honest conversations with our clients, and to kind of present individuals to them on a one-to-one case. So for us, the theory in terms of being ready for the real world is absolutely imperative, because it is about the scenarios, the use of AI, but also in terms of interviews. Interviews are really, really key. Individuals have not worked for a long period of time, and it's about that confidence that, as the person before me said, it's about the CVs, and that takes time, because that's around the individual one-to-one coaching sessions. That's about creating something that's robust, but something that's a genuine reflection of who they are, what they, where they are at this moment, where they see themselves, and the type of roles that they're looking for. But most importantly, really opening the scope in terms of types of roles that they may not have considered. Look at renewable sectors, look at, areas that we're looking at industrial shortages or the use of technology. So to really enhance those opportunities. But most importantly, in terms of, diversity and neuro-inclusivity, because we're finding that certainly across Manchester, we are seeing delegate participants that are more neurodiverse. So for us, it's really important we've adapted our courses, because it's not down to them to fit into us. We have to be open, and really as an inclusive, organisation, it's really, really vital that we do cater for the individuals that we are working with across the board. Next slide, please, Lucy. So measurable success and impact. So for us as an organisation, we have upskilled 4,806 professionals and execs across London. We, in terms of financial kind of investment, so looking at the financial implications, 335 million investment could potentially bridge the gap in the UK for upskilling of up to 65,000 individuals between the age of 50 to 64. There is also looking at soft skills. We're looking at an impressive £88 billion to the UK's economy. So this is, and at the moment it's kind of estimated that 127 billion people by 2025. And most important is the talent, what we're losing in terms of skill set, knowledge, but also some of these skills and trades that these individuals have from previous lives. So really, really important the way that we do business now, and those lessons can be passed on to future generations. So that mentoring and also being flexible about working with your 50 pluses, so that we are offering more flexibility within the workplace, offering them 2 or 3 days instead of a week, but asking them to mentor maybe the next I suppose generation of workers coming into that sector. So there's a lot to be had. There's just so much talent, so much potential, and we just need to really capitalise on that. So despite that, the current digital skills gap in the UK is costing us an astonishing £63 billion a year, just because we're not digitally where we need to be in terms of our people in the workplace, and that comes down to employer investment in terms of learning and development, but also access to tech. Again, I revert back to what we've seen so far in Manchester, that 98% of the people that we're seeing haven't got access to that, which is actually phenomenal, because they should have access to that. And next slide, please, Lucy. So for us, it is about looking at what we can do. How can we support that 50, that movement of trained and assessed and qualified individuals that are going to come into the workforce. And it's about equipping them with the digital skills that they need so that they do feel much more confident in doing that. And it's about having different provisions across the providers, to support the cohort of the 50 plus. And to us, what's really, really important is about that narrative. It's about us saying, okay, look, the journey is one that is transformational, just as we have changed, since the 1980s when the mobile phones came in and the way that we did business there, the financial sector. Then, the financial crash saw some massive changes then, the way that we work and the way that we do business, again, since COVID. So I think we're going to have more challenges from a business point of view, and for the the learning organisations that we support, the providers that we work with. It is because we look at supporting that age group, but most importantly, those professional execs, because they tend to be the ones that are actually left behind. So for us, it's about individual growth. It's not about limiting individuals. It's about harnessing what they can bring, being more adaptable, and most importantly, for us, that's really, really key in terms of the way that we certainly see the sector. The opportunities, and more organisations need to be open to employing more people within that age group. And most importantly, it's always around the learning and development. More investment has to come from organisations, not just for job seekers, but for their own staff. More investment has to come in terms of digital skills capability, but generally having a good offering across the board. So for us, these are just some testimonials for some of the courses that we've run at slightly high level. So one of the courses that we do is it's equivalent to, it's a business information data analytics course, and it's governs or looks at business intelligence. So for that, we had a master's graduate that actually learned more on our program than she did at Brunel University doing her master's. We do a leadership program, again, we've adapted for the welfare to work sector. And again, we had a senior manager on there who really kind of enjoyed the course, felt he was challenged, he had to reflect on what he had learned, how he applied his people skills. And actually at the end of that course, he got a job with Pepsi Coca-Cola as a project manager. And we also run one around, effective communication, looking at management and client resolution. And again, we had a learner there that really made her understand and think about her communication style, her strategy, and how she can come across in terms of interviews. So these are really, really kind of important things to us as to what we offer. And the final slide, please, Lucy. So any questions, we're happy to take, but pretty much this is kind of our engagement so far. Early days, like I said, across Manchester, but it's very, very different for us in comparison to kind of the London landscape.
I'm going to have to say no to questions right now because we're running quite far over now. So what we will do is we're going to go into breakouts, and we've got about 10 minutes within those breakouts, maybe a couple more. But we've got some questions that we'd really like you to consider during those breakouts. Mm-hmm. I'll pop them in the chat. Okay. And if everyone... if you can really make use of the chat function in the breakouts, because what that means is if you can kind of type into it, we'll be able to keep a record of that, because we can't record the breakouts, so we won't know necessarily what conversation's been had. And then if within your breakout, there'll be kind of small numbers in each one. If within your breakout, you can kind of nominate a dedicated spokesperson to just maybe be prepared to kind of share one thing in the main chat when we come back, and we can kind of sift through those as they're happening. Henry, are you ready to get everyone into breakouts?
Yeah. Fingers crossed the technology works, but yeah, okay. I'm going to click open, so within a couple of seconds, hopefully people will be moved, and then you'll come back after about 12 minutes.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I think everyone is back or slowly coming back. So yes, if people are happy to start kind of sharing the kind of key takeaways or the sort of most discussed item or the thing that came out most strongly in your group, does anyone fancy going first?
Yeah, how many groups were there?
There were 3.
Okay. So is everyone okay? I'll mention a couple of things from my group if they want to chip in. I know time-wise, what have we got? A minute each or something?
Got about 2-3 minutes each.
Okay, so maybe the others in the group. I think we started on the first one. One thing, and we were sharing lots that we're doing things in different ways from different organisations, some individually, some representing others. You know, it's a big mix. So there was something at the end where we said drop in the age. There's something around changes in practice about the lumping everybody into this box of 50 plus, and actually there's more to it than that. Maybe that's a convenient thing to be able to do, but there's something around that age. Would anyone else from the group want to say anything on that, just really briefly? It's fine if not. Tech barrier, maybe shout over me if so, rather than me leaving silence. Tech barrier was something that we can't necessarily do differently ourselves, but it did seem to be significant. There was something we were talking about at the end. Was it Deborah? Sorry, did I get that right?
No, yes, it was Joel. It was about poverty.
Yeah.
Poverty of place, poverty of education, the demographic of the area. There's a commonality of those I work with, whether they're 16 or whether they're 75. The poverty of their education, the lack of training, the lack of qualifications, you know, poor physical issues, background. The schooling is some of the poorest in the entire country. There's a lot of common factors that all age groups share that make it very difficult for them to access employment. And we sometimes forget that.
I think so. And I don't know if other people experience this, and you said it wasn't, you know, independent school people that come through and whatever. People go into a job and for 30 years, they get no other personal development. And that's the thing that I have seen that feels horrific, that there hasn't been any technical upskilling of people within a work environment. They learn one system and do it for 20 years. And that is where we're failing in workforces. There should be some obligation on workforces to be trained up outside of their sphere of influence. And some of the best companies are saying, here's an X amount to invest, do what you will with it, but make sure you're upskilling yourself as a person. So that was some of the thinking, unless anyone else from our group wants to share any last thing. Cool. The importance of giving people time. Yes, that was something that came through, wasn't it? That some of the most impactful things we've done is to be actually almost bat on the behalf of the person. And sometimes it needs that, certainly if someone hasn't got that capacity within themselves or has a lot of fear, that it has taken a coach to go into a place and say, look, I've got a brilliant person for you. Here's some details. They'll come through your system, but check them out. And it worked. But then also someone was from a bigger organization that cannot do that sort of engagement. So how do we get personal at scale?
So I think, Rebecca, you were in room 2 with me and Fiona and Catherine and a couple of others who were who'd had to dip out. Was there anything that you wanted to expand on within those points that you've put in there? I can see that Fiona's had to leave.
Yeah,
On your own
I
now.
think, yeah, there's a few here from the group, are there? Yeah, so we started off talking about the computer thing. I mean, how difficult it is for people that don't have any access to computers, and then we talked about how people value the length of time that we can spend with them and the personal approach. I think particularly for this age group as well, when they can remember what it was like before computers and all of that. And then we spoke about we spoke a little bit about peer sessions, group sessions, the importance of those, and social isolation. And you mentioned, you know, with the redundancy program, how people's networks were very strongly tied up with work. And we didn't say this, but from my perspective, sometimes there's a grieving process. Like, not only is life not quite worked out how you thought it was, and you're at that point in your life, well, I didn't think I'd be doing this right now, but also your network maybe isn't it as you thought it was. So the importance for this group about the impact of social isolation and how you can build opportunities to build networks.
Yeah, that was exactly it. We and, you know, as Joel and those of us who've worked on my program would know, that was one of the key things that came out, and one of the reasons why we created the peer support environment, and why we put this like in-person group session to actually kind of help people really get that sense of like I'm in this together and I'm not on my own, and kind of really build on that and develop on that. Group 3, Elaine, I know you were in that group, but if anyone else from that group wants to.
I can jump in.
Yeah.
Oh, go on, Sarah.
Okay. For us, you know, we kind of, so especially with Claire, we were talking about the use of AI within organisations in terms of replacement of roles, but also within, you know, generally within the recruitment process, and how it is so commonly used actually, and people aren't aware just how much it is used. And it's about organisations also failing to amend the policies and procedures to reflect the use of AI within that. So the DWP, you know, do use that, as I was told today, but so do a lot of organisations, and it's around, I suppose, really giving that insight and that training, that knowledge to participants on programmes, because that's going to be commonly used, and there certainly is going to be more redundancies of the use of AI, which we've already seen, and it's just going to get bigger and bigger.
Interesting you say that, because one of the things that especially those people who were taking part in our prototype found really useful that Joel did with them was a sort of debunking of how job sites work, how they like search your CVs for kind of keywords or things that you need to include. And that, I think, was eye-opening to a lot of people. And I think part of the kind of AI sifting and a lot of that stuff that happens behind the scenes, like you're talking about, actually people don't understand that, or people don't know that. And so it's really kind of critical to kind of unmystify it, for sure. Was there anything else from your group?
There was one last point around that sort of self-employment piece as well, and how actually people have great ideas, but it's the processes behind it that people struggle with, and the making sure that they're putting the right things in place for self-employment and how that will work. And we very briefly touched on sort of the issues that may link to not wanting to access services and get support, and services not being seen as for them, that could help with that. So maybe if there was something around making services more open, more accessible, more appropriate, then people would feel more willing to come forward and get that support, rather than it be later down the line and there be more issues that way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a real shame actually that Daisy couldn't do her presentation, because that was around actually helping older workers into self-employment. She said that she'd had there was some unexpected work going on outside the building that had been creating some technological issues, and she'd really like to come back and present to this group at some point. So hopefully we'll be able to find a space where we can slot her in for that. Was there anything else from any of the groups that hasn't been kind of picked up? We've got like maybe another minute or two. So if there's anything burning that happened, that was said in your group that you haven't yet had a chance to communicate, now is your moment. Look, everyone is feeling like they've had their moment to get things off their chest. That's fantastic. So as I mentioned at the beginning, we are looking to kind of do a quarterly newsletter. So please, if you're interested in kind of hearing more about what we're doing, more about the kind of things we're finding out, we do have, as well as the resources that I mentioned earlier, we've got like a library of case studies that we're sort of building up on our website as well. And we want to build on that, and we want to add to that. So any of the things that you're telling us about, or any of the things that you're learning that we kind of think we could kind of pull into a case study or a blog for this newsletter, that's the kind of thing that we'd be really interested in. So please keep sharing with us. I know Irena put her email address in the chat very early on in today's session. So either contact her or contact me. Joel, yes.
Yeah, just wondering if there's a format that you'd like us to, if there's a case study, to simplify it, make it quick for us all to pass something to you. Maybe it's only me that overthinks putting these in place, but is there something you'd like to hear from us that could just allow us to pop in a little bit of structure and a quote or something?
I'm going to defer that question to Irena, who doesn't know I'm about to defer that question to her, but she has been the one responsible for pulling the case studies together. So it might be if you kind of if people just send over a short overview, and then Irena, I don't know what else you would kind of like from that.
Yeah, I think it's something we need to talk about within the team. The case studies that I've been looking at have had very similar information, but I think I think it would be good probably to have some kind of format, and I think it's something that we will get back to all those lovely people who have already put their email addresses into the box or contacted me. But yeah, if you've got an idea for something, then definitely send it through, and then very shortly we will have made a decision about what those headings are going to be, or what the kind of format should be. But good point, Joel. Thank you.
And thank you, Irena. We've just got a few minutes left, so I just thought I'd tell you what we have coming up, or we've kind of come up with some broad themes for the next 3 meetings. So again, these meetings once a quarter. So the next one is going to be in November. We'd originally allocated the 1st of November, but we've just realised this week that is half term in some places, because obviously half term moves around in a couple of different places. So I think Henry will be in touch with you about how we can reschedule that date to make it more convenient for people. But that one will be around midlife MOTs and the work that's kind of going on more broadly around the country around midlife MOTs. In February, we'll be looking at lived experience and the role of kind of lived experience in the work that we all do, and how we can use voice to create better programs and better work, etc., etc. And then, as I mentioned, we will have our kind of insights into the sort of outputs and outcomes from this project in May. So hopefully you'll kind of be looking forward to all of that yourselves. And I think that's us. So unless anyone has anything else they want to kind of add, we've actually somehow managed to come in 5 minutes ahead of schedule, which means I can go and get a cup of tea before my next meeting. But does anyone have anything else they want to say at this point, or you can all have 5 minutes of your life back?
Just thank you very much. It's been really interesting and nice to meet people, and breakout rooms I think are really lovely spaces to share some ideas and thoughts with people that one wouldn't normally meet up with. So thank you very much.
And I'd just like to say I hope you're all at the ERSA conference on the 28th of November.
Great plug. Fab. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for your time and everything you shared today. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we will get some of the slides out to you hopefully this week. So yeah, enjoy the rest of your week. I hope you have a good week ahead of you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank